This is a 2016 GMC Sierra 2500 HD, but this video should apply to 2014 through 2019 Chevy Duramax diesels 4x4 and 2015 through 2019 GMCs. So we've had a Pitman and idler arm issue that's been going on. Loose steering, tried to get it aligned, and they said that we had to replace the Pitman and idler arms. So for any of you that have done this job, you know that the Pitman and idler arm are pretty hard to get to. Idler arm's not so bad. It's more the Pitman arm than anything. So getting underneath the truck, this is what it looks like. This is our steering box right here. For me specifically, your Pitman arm usually sits right here, and you got a big nut and lock washer that goes right here that holds it in place and of course you'll see this frame rail's in the way, and trying to get this entire steering box out was not exactly an ideal situation, so I decided to try a whole bunch of different things to try to get this Pitman arm off. First things first, in terms of clearance, take the skid plates off. I had a metal skid plate, which was protecting the actual 4x4 module transfer case right there. And then there's a really crappy, dinky plastic skid plate that goes right here. If you'll notice, I removed the sway bar. I removed the sway bar, and that looks like this. You have two 10mm bolts that are holding each side in, and then you'll actually have your link right here that's connected to your knuckle, and these are 15mm right here. So a 15mm socket on the bottom of this one, and a wrench, which it's orientated like this, bottom to top, and that goes right there. Two bushings at the top on the knuckle. That got that off, and this is just for clearance is why I took this off. There's really no other way to get a wrench on this Pitman arm nut, which not entire. Oh, there it is right here. If I looked it up correctly, this is 46mm, 47mm, one of the two, but I ended up using a very, very large wrench, which, because of the angle right here, as you can see, coming back, I was able to actually get the really large wrench and loosen that up. The first thing you're gonna wanna do in terms of removing the Pitman and idler arm is you're gonna have the idler arm connecting right here to the drag link, and you're gonna have the Pitman arm connecting here to the drag link. Those two are 24mm bolts, and your idler arm is gonna be sitting right there. The opposite side right here is, I believe, an 18mm bolt, and it is connected to a 24mm nut. The easiest way is to disconnect these two first and pop them out of the way, and this drag link actually moves pretty freely, so I was able to twist it out of the way and pop it out. I ended up using a AutoZone Pitman Arm Puller, and I will show it. It's not the same one that you'll see online. Usually you'll see something like this, and this is not going to fit with the angle right here. The frame rail's in the way. So what I ended up doing is using a ball joint separator and put the nut back on there loosely, just to cover up and protect the threads. and I put this part in between this boot and the actual Pitman arm, and just like that. And this nut, of course, is the wrong direction, so I used an open-ended wrench and had to orientate it like this in order to pop it off. And of course, to move this thing in such a way to where you could actually work on it manageably, you'll have these bolts right here, which are also 24 millimeter. I removed these two right here, this top one and this bottom one, and I kept this one loose so that I could actually push it up out of the way, and then I used my impact wrench in order to tighten that up and keep it at this angle. In order to actually remove the Pitman arm and the nut, I had to keep this pretty loose, probably on like the last couple of threads. You could completely remove it too, but I don't exactly recommend that. There's that spot right there where it actually threads into. I don't really recommend that because it's really difficult to actually get this thing back into place in order to get that nut back where it needs to go. Idler arm with the pry bar. Of course, this is way bigger than the one I use, but something with a flat edge right there. Once you get actual bolts, which slid out pretty easily for me, once I actually got the nut and bolt, or the nuts loosened and taken off, bolts slid out pretty easily. There are two washers that go on the nut side, and just pried it out, moved it out of the way, and then since that drag link right there was already loosened, I was able to just move it out of the way, no problem. Idler arm is not the biggest pain in this job. Here are those two 10 millimeter bolts on either side that connect your sway bar. I just put them back so that I'll remember where they go next time. None of this had Loctite on it at all, so I'm going to be applying blue or red, I haven't really decided yet, onto everything whenever I'm done. Here is, where is it? Ah, here it is. This is actually on the lower control arm. This is the portion right here where that bolt slid through in order to get the actual sway bar out of the way. You may get a little bit lucky and be able to just leave it loose, but for me, it'd just be better to get it out of the way. Other than that, in terms of putting everything back together, I'm going to be putting this part of the Pitman arm on first. I have to wait for this part to come in. Whenever I found it, there was just a zip tie holding it together, and it's ripped. And this is the only make and model vehicle I could find that actually had a Pitman Arm Boot, but it was $27 on Amazon, 1-day shipping. So that was no big deal. Connect that up, put my idler arm back, and then connect it to my actual drag link. There's a notch on this Pitman arm, so don't worry about getting this off and then not being able to put it on the right way, or there having to be a certain way that it needs to be put on, because there is a notch preventing you from making that major mistake. Once I get the idler arm put in, Pitman arm put in, I'll connect my drag links and tighten everything up, and then I'll put my sway bar back on, and then also put my sway bar back on. I did loosen the steering linkage on the top of I did loosen the steering linkage, but honestly, I don't really think it's necessary. If you find that it is necessary, though, I'll show you the place that I actually loosened it from. Completely took it off, actually, but try that again. Better. for your hood, it is a simple grab it right here, push to your right, and this is a spring-loaded hood, so it'll stay up on its own. In case you've never been under your hood before, I don't really recommend. This isn't a beginner job, but you know what? If you want this to be your first job, have at it. You'll see right down there is where I loosened my steering linkage up from. That blue T actually is right where it came from. If you can kind of see, there is a little right there, right underneath that T is where that bolt goes through, and there's a nut on the opposite side. And the nut and bolt combination looks just like this. I believe this is a 15 millimeter. Everything on this job is metric. You could try to, I heard a 1 3/4 inch socket. Well, I don't think you'll be able to use a socket actually, but you could get an 1 3/4 wrench, and I believe that will actually get this Pitman Arm nut off right here. But I highly recommend using this ball joint separator. And as you can see right here is where I had my, I'll actually just show you. Here's your Pitman arm. It'll be orientated like this, and I had it just like this on the lip right here, and then right here I had my nut threaded. You won't be able to actually get it onto just the threads because it's too far in. So you see right here my that marked up piece is where that was sitting, and that's just outside the threads. And I really do not recommend you doing that on the threads anyways and gumming up the threads. So put this nut back on before you do that. Tightened it pretty tight. Didn't bend the actual ball joint separator at all. And whacked it with a hammer a couple of times just to get everything loose. Tightened it, and just like in between every 4 or 5 turns, I whacked it with a hammer, and kept tightening it, and barely touched it with a wrench, and it just popped right off. The other benefit of having this nut on is that this will stop right there on the nut instead of flying and hitting you in the face. So this is the disassembly of a Pitman and idler arm on a 2016 GMC Sierra. Again, model years of 2014 to 2019 Chevy and 2015 through 2019 GMC will also apply. 4x4, of course.